The battle had been raging for 6 standard hours when everything changed. Admiral Vorath of the Kelthari Empire stood on the command bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, watching the destruction unfold across the tactical display. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence as he processed the chaos before him. The Allied fleet of the Galactic Concordance was crumbling under the combined assault of 3 major powers. The Kelthari, the insectoid Vrexy swarm, and the crystalline Mordak collective had formed an unlikely alliance for one purpose alone. They intended to crush the younger races of the outer spiral arm before they could grow strong enough to challenge the established order. It was a massacre in the making. The Concordance fleet numbered perhaps 300 vessels. Most of them were outdated patrol ships and converted cargo haulers pressed into military service. They faced nearly 800 warships from the 3 empires, each vessel purpose-built for destruction. The outcome had never been in doubt. This was not a battle. It was an execution. Vorath allowed himself a moment of satisfaction as he watched another Concordance cruiser break apart under concentrated plasma fire. The ship's reactor went critical, and the explosion consumed 2 nearby frigates that had been trying to shield the larger vessel. 3 kills for the price of 1 strike. Efficient. "Admiral," his tactical officer called out, "the enemy formation is collapsing. They are attempting to retreat toward the Varus Nebula." "They will not reach it," Vorath replied calmly. "Order the Vrexy carrier groups to cut off their escape route. I want this finished within the hour." The Vrexy ships moved like a swarm of angry insects, which was fitting given the nature of their crews. Hundreds of smaller attack craft poured from the carrier bays, forming a living wall of destruction between the fleeing Concordance vessels and their only hope of escape. The nebula's radiation would have masked their signatures and allowed them to scatter. Now they had nowhere to run. Vorath watched the slaughter continue with cold efficiency. This was the natural order of things. The strong dominated the weak. The ancient empires had ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years, and they would rule it for 10,000 more. These upstart civilizations, with their idealistic notions of equality and cooperation, were nothing more than parasites, feeding on the scraps left behind by their betters. A new signal appeared on the tactical display. Vorath frowned, his scaled brow creasing as he tried to understand what he was seeing. "What is that?" he demanded. His sensor officer leaned forward, manipulating the controls with practiced efficiency. The display zoomed in on the anomaly. There, at the very edge of the battlefield, something was happening. Space itself seemed to twist and fold, creating patterns that made no logical sense. "Unknown gravitational disturbance, Admiral. It does not match any known transit method. Not a hyperspace window, not a fold space corridor, not a wormhole terminus. I have never seen anything like this." The disturbance grew larger, spreading across nearly 10,000 kilometers of space. Energy readings spiked so high that the sensors automatically filtered the data to prevent overload. Colors that had no name rippled through the anomaly, and then it simply opened. A ship emerged. Vorath felt his heart stop beating for 3 full seconds as he stared at the vessel that slid through the tear in reality. It was massive, easily 5 times the size of his flagship. But its size was not what made his blood run cold. It was the design, or rather, the complete lack of any design he recognized. The ship was black. Not painted black, not armored in dark metal. It was a black so absolute that it seemed to drink in the light around it. The vessel had no clear front or back, no obvious weapons ports, no visible engine signatures. It was simply a shape, a presence, an absence of light given form and purpose. Every sensor on the Eternal Dominion screamed warnings simultaneously. The tactical display flickered and died. Secondary systems crashed. Even the lights on the bridge dimmed momentarily as something reached out from that black ship and touched their systems with invisible fingers. "What is happening?" Vorath roared. "Report!" "I cannot explain it, Admiral. The sensor officer's voice cracked with genuine fear. "That ship, it is doing something to our systems. Not an attack. Not exactly. It is as if it is looking at us, looking at everything, every ship in the fleet, every database, every communication channel. It is reading us like we would read a data pad." The tactical display came back online, but the information it showed made no sense. The black ship was not moving, not attacking, not doing anything that Vorath could understand. It simply hung there in space, watching the battle continue around it. And then it spoke. Every communication channel in the combined fleet activated simultaneously. Every speaker, every display, every interface that could carry a signal broadcast the same message. The voice was neither male nor female, neither organic nor mechanical. It was simply a voice, calm and measured, speaking in perfect Kelthari, perfect Vrexy, perfect Mordak, and dozens of other languages all at once. This conflict is observed. The aggressors are identified. The defenders are identified. A decision will be made. Vorath felt the scales on his neck rise in instinctive fear. He had commanded warships for 200 years. He had crushed rebellions, conquered worlds, and destroyed entire civilizations. Nothing had ever made him feel like this. Nothing had ever made him feel small. "All ships target that vessel," he commanded. "Fire at will." The order was relayed across the fleet. 800 warships turned their attention to the mysterious intruder. Plasma cannons powered up. Missile bays opened. Energy beams charged to maximum capacity. The combined firepower of 3 galactic empires prepared to strike as one. Nothing happened. The weapons did not fire. The cannons did not discharge. The missiles remained locked in their tubes. Every ship in the combined fleet was suddenly, completely, and utterly powerless. "Admiral, our weapon systems are offline. Navigation is offline. Life support is still functioning, but we have no control over any offensive systems." Vorath stared at the black ship in disbelief. This was impossible. The Kelthari Empire possessed the most advanced military technology in the known galaxy. Their warships had been refined over millennia of conquest. No single vessel, no matter how large, should be able to neutralize an entire fleet. The voice spoke again. "Aggression against this vessel is noted but irrelevant. The decision has been made. The aggressors will cease their attack on the Concordance fleet. This is not a request." For a long moment, nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The entire battlefield had frozen, 800 warships hanging motionless in space, while 300 battered Concordance vessels watched in stunned silence. Then, the Vrexy Hive Admiral made a mistake. The Vrexy operated through a distributed intelligence, thousands of individual minds linked together into a collective consciousness. They did not understand fear the way other species did. They understood only survival and expansion, and in their collective judgment, this strange ship was a threat that must be eliminated by any means necessary. The Vrexy flagship was equipped with a weapon that had never been used in combat, an experimental device that operated on principles so dangerous that even the Vrexy had hesitated to deploy it. The weapon did not require ship systems to function. It was self-contained, powered by its own dedicated reactor, triggered by a simple manual switch that any crew member could activate. The Hive Admiral gave the order. A Vrexy warrior pressed the switch. A beam of pure annihilation erupted from the Vrexy flagship, traveling at speeds that made light seem slow. It was a wound in reality itself, a cutting edge of destruction that could slice through any known material. The beam struck the black ship. For one brief moment, Vorath felt hope surge through his chest. Perhaps this intruder could be destroyed. Perhaps the combined might of 3 empires was still enough to overcome any threat. Then the beam stopped. It did not dissipate. It did not reflect. It did not pass through. The beam simply stopped, held in place as if frozen in time, a finger of destruction pointing accusingly at the black hull of the unknown vessel. The voice spoke a third time, and now there was something new in its tone, something that might have been disappointment. You were given an opportunity to demonstrate wisdom. You chose otherwise. Consequence will follow. The black ship moved. It did not accelerate. It did not maneuver. It was simply in one place, and then it was in another, appearing directly above the Rexy flagship, as if the intervening distance had never existed. A light emerged from somewhere within that absolute darkness, a single point of brilliant white that was somehow more terrifying than any weapon Vorath had ever seen. The light touched the Vrexy flagship. The great warship did not explode. It did not burn. It did not shatter or tear or collapse. It simply ceased to exist. One moment it was there, a kilometer-long vessel of metal and composite, crewed by 50,000 Rexy warriors. The next moment it was gone, leaving behind nothing but empty space. The collective scream of the Rexy swarm echoed across every communication channel. 50,000 minds snuffed out in an instant, leaving a wound in their shared consciousness that would never fully heal. The Rexy swarm has demonstrated its nature, the voice announced. They chose violence when peace was offered. They will be remembered. Vorath watched in horror as the black ship began to move through the Rexy fleet. It did not hurry. It did not rush. It simply traveled from ship to ship, and each vessel it touched disappeared. Carriers the size of small moons, destroyers bristling with weapons, swarms of fighters so numerous they blocked out the stars. All of them gone. The Vrexy tried to flee. Some attempted to jump to hyperspace, but their drives would not engage. Others tried to scatter in every direction, hoping that at least some would escape. None did. In less than 10 minutes, the Vrexy swarm's contribution to the battle was erased from existence. 300 warships, nearly 20 million soldiers, gone as if they had never been. The black ship returned to its original position, hanging motionless in space once more. The white light had faded, but the memory of what it had done would haunt every survivor for the rest of their lives. The Kelthari and Mordak forces will now withdraw, the voice commanded. The Concordance fleet will be allowed to retreat. This battle is ended. Vorath wanted to argue. He wanted to rage against this humiliation, to demand answers, to fight back with every resource at his command. But he had just watched 300 warships disappear like morning dew under a harsh sun. Pride was a luxury he could no longer afford. All ships, he ordered, his voice hollow and defeated. Fall back to the designated coordinates. Do not engage the unknown vessel. Do not engage the Concordance. Just fall back. The combined fleet of the Kelthari Empire and the Mordak Collective began its retreat. Ships that had been moments away from total victory now fled like frightened animals, their crews struggling to comprehend what they had just witnessed. The Concordance vessels remained where they were, equally stunned. Their commanders had resigned themselves to death. They had been preparing final messages to their families, making peace with their gods, accepting the end that had seemed so inevitable. Now they were alive, and they had no idea why. As the last of the Imperial ships vanished into hyperspace, the black vessel turned its attention to the Concordance fleet. The voice spoke once more, gentler now, almost kind. You fought well against impossible odds. You protected each other when protection seemed meaningless. You did not surrender even when surrender was the logical choice. These are admirable qualities. The Concordance flagship, a converted passenger liner called the Hope of Morning, transmitted a response. The voice that answered was tired and confused, but beneath the exhaustion was a desperate need to understand. Who are you? What are you? Why did you help us? There was a pause. When the voice answered, it carried something that might have been amusement. We are human. Our ship is the whisper of consequence. We helped you because you deserved to be helped. Human. The word spread through the Concordance fleet like wildfire. Human. A species that had appeared in the galactic records only 300 years ago, primitive tool users on a single, unremarkable world. A species that had been dismissed as irrelevant by every major power, too young and too weak to matter in the grand games of galactic politics. A species that had just erased an entire swarm fleet from existence without apparent effort. "We do not understand," the Hope of Morning transmitted. "The humans we know of are not capable of such things. They have only barely achieved faster-than-light travel. They have no military presence beyond their home system. How is this possible?" The black ship began to move, slowly this time, approaching the damaged Concordance flagship with careful deliberation. As it drew closer, its form seemed to shift, the absolute darkness giving way to patterns and textures that had not been visible before. The vessel was not featureless after all. It was simply built on a scale that made its details invisible from a distance. "The humans you know of are our younger siblings," the voice explained. "They walk a path we walked long ago. They will grow as we grew. They will learn as we learned. And one day, they will stand where we now stand, looking out at a galaxy that once seemed infinite and realizing that it is smaller than they ever imagined." A section of the black hull opened, revealing an interior space that glowed with warm, golden light. The contrast with the absolute darkness of the exterior was almost painful to behold. "Come aboard," the voice invited. "There is much to discuss. And you have earned the right to hear it. The galaxy is about to change, and you will be part of that change, if you choose to be." The commander of the Hope of Morning stared at the invitation, knowing that accepting would change everything, knowing that refusing might be the safer choice, knowing that safety had never been what the Concordance was about. "We accept," she said finally. "We will come aboard." As the first shuttle departed from the Concordance flagship, carrying the leaders who would witness humanity's true face for the first time, the whisper of consequence waited with infinite patience. The galaxy had believed it understood the rules of power. It had believed that strength came from size and age and accumulated resources. It had believed that the older races would always dominate the younger, that the established order would never truly change. That belief had died today, along with 20 million Vrexi and the certainty of 3 ancient empires. Something new was rising in the cosmos, and the stars themselves seemed to hold their breath in anticipation. Commander Elena Vasquez of the Hope of Morning had seen many strange things in her 40 years of service to the Galactic Concordance. She had witnessed the birth of stars in the ardent nursery. She had walked on worlds where silicon-based life forms sang songs that lasted for centuries. She had negotiated with beings so alien that communication required translating through 17 intermediate languages. None of that had prepared her for what she found inside the whisper of consequence. The shuttle bay alone was larger than her entire ship. The walls seemed to be made of the same absolute darkness as the exterior hull, but they pulsed with subtle patterns of light that created the impression of depth extending forever. The floor beneath her feet felt solid, but looked like a window into infinity, showing stars and galaxies spinning in the void below. Her escort consisted of 3 other officers from the Concordance fleet. Captain Mirren of the destroyer Swift Current, Admiral Toth, who commanded what remained of the Velthari contribution to their alliance, and Ambassador Yellen, who had somehow survived the destruction of the diplomatic vessel she had been stationed on. They stood together in the vast emptiness of the shuttle bay, waiting. They did not wait long. A door opened in the darkness, and a figure walked through. It was humanoid in shape, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. But the proportions were wrong in ways that Elena could not immediately identify. Too graceful, too balanced. Every movement flowing into the next with a precision that seemed almost mechanical, yet carried none of the stiffness of artificial motion. The figure was female, or at least presented as female. Her skin was dark brown, her hair was silver and cut short, and her eyes glowed with a soft blue light that had no apparent source. She wore a simple gray uniform with no markings or insignia, and she smiled as she approached the visitors. "Welcome to the Whisper of Consequence," she said. Her voice was the same one that had broadcast across the battlefield, but now it carried warmth and personality that had been absent before. "I am Captain Sarah Chen. I apologize for the dramatic introduction, but sometimes drama is necessary to make a point." Elena found her voice after several long seconds of stunned silence. "Captain Chen, I have many questions." "I know. I have read your thoughts." Chen held up a hand to forestall the obvious objection. "Not intrusively. Not without your implicit permission. Your surface thoughts are remarkably loud, Commander. You are wondering if you are dreaming. You are wondering if you are dead. You are wondering if this is some elaborate trick by the empires to extract information from you. The answers are no, no, and no. This is real. All of it." Ambassador Yellen stepped forward, her diplomatic training overcoming her shock. "Captain Chen, you claim to be human. The humanity we know could not have built this ship, could not have done what you did to the Vrexy fleet. Please explain this contradiction." Chen nodded, her expression becoming more serious. "Walk with me. I will show you rather than tell you. That tends to be more convincing." She turned and walked toward the door she had entered through. The concordance officers exchanged glances, then followed. There seemed to be no other option. The corridor beyond was long and curved, following the contour of the ship's hull. Windows lined one side, showing the stars outside, but the view kept shifting in impossible ways. Elena realized they were seeing the battle site from multiple angles simultaneously, the perspective changing with each step they took. "What you know of humanity," Chen began as they walked, "is accurate but incomplete. Your records show a species that achieved spaceflight approximately 300 years ago. You have observed their expansion into nearby star systems. You have cataloged their technology as primitive by galactic standards. You have dismissed them as insignificant. This was the assessment of the Galactic Survey," Admiral Toth confirmed. "We had no reason to doubt it. You had no reason to doubt it because we ensured that you would not. The humans you have observed are real. Their achievements are genuine, but they represent only one branch of our species." They entered a chamber that took Elena's breath away. It was a gallery of some kind, filled with displays and exhibits that stretched in every direction. Holographic projections showed scenes from history, technology, art, and war. The scale was overwhelming, like walking into a museum that contained the entire history of a civilization. 60,000 years ago, Chen continued, humanity first achieved faster-than-light travel. We were young and eager and completely unprepared for what we would find among the stars. She gestured toward a display showing a primitive spacecraft, boxy and inefficient by any standard. Our first ships were barely functional. Our weapons were crude. Our understanding of the galaxy was non-existent. We stumbled into the void like children wandering into a forest full of predators. The display shifted, showing scenes of battle. Human ships being torn apart by alien weapons, human colonies being razed to ash, human prisoners being experimented on, enslaved, consumed. The established powers of that era saw us as we were, weak, vulnerable, useful only as resources to be exploited. They hunted us nearly to extinction. Our homeworld was bombarded into a wasteland. Our colonies were wiped out. 99% of our species died within the first century of contact. Elena felt her stomach turn at the images. She had read historical accounts of species that had been driven to extinction by the older races. She had never imagined that humanity had been one of them. "But you survived," Captain Mirren said quietly. "Obviously. We survived." Chen's voice was cold now, edged with ancient anger. We fled, we hid, we adapted. The remnants of humanity found refuge in places that the great empires considered worthless. Black holes, neutron stars, the spaces between galaxies where nothing lived and nothing grew. We learned to survive where survival was supposed to be impossible. They moved to another section of the gallery, where the displays showed different kinds of ships. These were still crude by the standards of the Whisper of Consequence, but they were clearly more advanced than anything the current empires possessed. For 10,000 years, we did nothing but survive. We developed technologies that the galaxy had never imagined because we had no choice. We learned to bend space and time because normal physics would not keep us safe. We engineered our own bodies because our original forms were too fragile for the environments we inhabited. We became something new. Chen turned to face them directly, and Elena saw something in those glowing eyes that made her want to run. Not cruelty, not malice, something worse. Patient certainty. The absolute confidence of a being that had seen everything the universe could throw at it and had not only survived but thrived. We call ourselves the Ascended. We are still human. Our DNA has not changed. Our fundamental psychology has not changed. But we have grown beyond the limitations that once defined us. Why reveal yourselves now? Admiral Toth asked. If you have been hiding for 60,000 years, why intervene in this battle? Why show us any of this? Chen smiled, and for a moment she looked almost like a normal person, a woman sharing a private joke with friends. Because of them. She waved her hand, and a new display appeared. It showed a blue-green world orbiting a yellow star, a planet covered in oceans and continents and clouds. Earth. The original human homeworld, somehow restored from the devastation Chen had described. 40,000 years ago, we returned to our birthplace. We found it healing. Life had survived the bombardment, had adapted and evolved. And among that new life, humanity had emerged again, not from us, not from any survivors of the original catastrophe. Parallel evolution, the same basic template, developing independently on the same world. Elena stared at the image of Earth in amazement. A second humanity? Yes. They have no memory of what came before, no knowledge of the horrors their ancestors experienced. They developed in isolation, protected by the fact that no one thought to look for humanity on a world that had been declared dead 60,000 years ago. You have been watching them, Ambassador Yellen realized, all this time. Watching but not interfering. We made a choice, Chen confirmed. We could have revealed ourselves to them. We could have shared our technology, our history, our knowledge. We could have lifted them to our level in a single generation. But we did not. Why not? Chen's expression became thoughtful. Because we remembered what we lost when we were forced to change too quickly. The trauma of our near extinction shaped everything we became. Our strength was forged in suffering, and that suffering left scars that will never fully heal. We did not want that for our younger siblings. We wanted them to grow naturally, at their own pace, developing their own identity without the weight of our history pressing down on them. She led them to a viewing platform that overlooked the central core of the ship. The space below was vast, filled with machinery and light and movement that Elena could not begin to comprehend. Thousands of figures moved through the space, some human in appearance, others clearly modified for purposes she could not guess. For 300 years we have watched over them from the shadows. We have protected them from threats they never knew existed. We have deflected the attention of the great empires, ensured that no one took too close an interest in that small, unremarkable world in an unfashionable part of the galaxy. The empires believe humanity is primitive and irrelevant, Captain Mirren said slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. That belief is not natural. You engineered it. Yes, We seeded false information. We manipulated intelligence networks. We ensured that any serious investigation into human capabilities would reach the same conclusion. Harmless, insignificant, not worth the effort of conquest. But that protection is ending, Elena guessed. That is why you are here. That is why you revealed yourselves. Chen nodded gravely. The alliance that attacked you today was not formed by accident. The Kelthari, the Vrexi, the Mordak, they have been manipulated by forces that we have been tracking for centuries. An ancient faction that has learned the truth about humanity, about both humanities. What faction? Who could possibly threaten beings like you? We are powerful, Commander. We are not omnipotent. There are things in this galaxy older than us, things that remember the universe before stars formed. They have been patient, watching from the spaces between dimensions, waiting for an opportunity. They see humanity as a threat, both versions of us. They want us eliminated before we grow strong enough to challenge them. The weight of what Chen was describing pressed down on Elena like a physical force. Galactic politics had always been complex, but this was something else entirely. This was conspiracy on a scale that made empires seem like children playing games. "What do you want from us?" she asked finally. "Why tell the Concordance any of this?" Chen turned away from the viewing platform and began walking again, leading them toward another section of the ship. "Because we cannot protect both humanities forever. Our resources are vast, but not infinite. Our attention is divided across too many fronts, and the enemy is growing bolder. Today's battle was a test. They wanted to see if we would intervene, and now they know that we will. So you need allies. We need more than allies. We need partners. The Concordance is imperfect, young, often naive. But you represent something that the established empires do not. You believe in cooperation. You believe in lifting up the weak rather than crushing them. You believe in building rather than destroying." They entered a chamber that Elena could only describe as a garden. Real plants grew here. Trees and flowers and vines that filled the space with life and color. Water flowed through channels carved into the floor, and sunlight streamed down from a ceiling that showed a clear blue sky. "This is our memory of Earth," Chen explained. "The Earth that existed before the bombardment. We have preserved it here, kept it alive across the millennia, as a reminder of what we lost and what we fight to protect." She picked a flower from a nearby bush, a simple yellow bloom that looked achingly familiar despite coming from a world Elena had never seen. "We want to give our younger siblings the chance to grow up in a galaxy that does not want to destroy them. We want to give them the time they need to become what they will become, without the trauma that shaped us. But we cannot do this alone. We need civilizations that will stand with them, that will teach them, that will welcome them into the galactic community when they are ready." "You want us to protect humanity," Admiral Toth said, "the younger humanity, the ones on Earth. We want you to befriend them. When the time is right, when they have developed enough to understand, we want you to be there, to offer them partnership rather than exploitation. To show them that the galaxy is not only full of predators, that there are species who will extend a hand in friendship rather than a weapon in conquest." Ambassador Yellen had been quiet for some time, processing everything she had heard. Now she spoke, her voice steady, despite the enormity of the situation. "You said there are ancient enemies moving against humanity, both humanities. What happens if they succeed? What happens if they destroy the younger humans before they can develop their potential?" Chen's expression darkened. "Then we will be alone again, the last remnant of our species, without hope of renewal, without connection to our origins. We will have technology and power beyond imagination, but we will have lost something that cannot be replaced." "Your future," Elena said softly. "They represent your future. That is why you protect them so fiercely. They represent hope, hope that our species can be more than what suffering made us, Hope that humanity can grow in light rather than darkness. Hope that everything we sacrificed, everything we endured, will mean something in the end. The garden seemed to grow quieter, the artificial sunlight dimming slightly, as if the ship itself was responding to the emotional weight of the conversation. "We are offering you a choice," Chen continued. "You can return to your fleet, complete your retreat, and never speak of what you have seen. We will continue to protect you from afar, as we have always done. The great empires will eventually tire of fighting you, and you will survive in the shadows of the galaxy for another few centuries." "Or," Captain Mirren asked, "or you can join us, formally, openly. We will share knowledge with the Concordance. We will help you develop technologies that will transform your civilization. In return, you will help us prepare the way for humanity's emergence onto the galactic stage. You will be their advocates, their teachers, their first friends among the stars." The offer hung in the air, enormous and terrifying and wonderful all at once. Elena thought about her ship, held together with emergency patches and desperate prayers. She thought about her crew, volunteers and conscripts and refugees who had chosen to fight for the Concordance knowing they would probably die. She thought about all the smaller species crushed under the weight of the great empires, all the civilizations that had never been given a chance to grow. "If we accept," she said carefully, "we become targets. The enemies you described will come for us as well. Yes, you will be in danger, more danger than you have ever faced. But you will not face it alone. And if we refuse?" Chen shrugged, a surprisingly human gesture from a being who had transcended humanity 60,000 years ago. "Then we will respect your choice. We will not force alliance on anyone. That would make us no better than the empires we oppose." Elena looked at her companions. She saw fear in their eyes, but she also saw something else: determination, hope, the same stubborn refusal to surrender that had kept the Concordance alive against impossible odds for generations. "I cannot speak for the entire Concordance," she said finally. "I am only a commander of a single ship, but I believe I know what they will choose." She extended her hand, a gesture of friendship that humans had used for thousands of years on the world she had never seen. "We accept." Chen took her hand, and her grip was warm and firm and real, human, despite everything. "Then welcome, Commander Vasquez. Welcome to the war that will decide the fate of the galaxy." Above them, unseen and unheard, the ancient enemies stirred in their dark places, sensing that something had changed. The balance had shifted. New players had entered the game, and somewhere, on a small blue world orbiting a yellow star, 8 billion humans continued their lives in blissful ignorance, never knowing that two civilizations had just pledged to protect them, never knowing that the cosmos itself had been shocked by the revelation of what their species could become. The second phase of humanity's great story was about to begin. 6 months had passed since the battle that changed everything. The news spread through the Galactic Concordance like fire through dry grass. A mysterious human vessel had appeared during their darkest hour. It had annihilated an entire Vrexy fleet with a single weapon. It had forced two of the most powerful empires in the galaxy to retreat without firing a shot. And most shocking of all, it had revealed that humanity, the species everyone had dismissed as primitive and irrelevant, was actually one of the oldest and most advanced civilizations in existence. The empires responded with predictable fury. The Kelthari declared the Concordance a criminal organization harboring dangerous fugitives. The Mordak Collective sealed their borders and began a massive military buildup. The remnants of the Vrexy swarm, those few hive ships that had not participated in the doomed attack, went silent and vanished into uncharted space. And throughout the galaxy, smaller species watched and wondered and hoped. Admiral Vorath stood in the throne room of the Kelthari Imperial Palace, facing the judgment of beings who had ruled an empire for 10,000 years. The Eternal Council consisted of the 12 oldest and most powerful Kelthari, each one a veteran of wars that had shaped galactic history. They looked down at him from their elevated positions, their four eyes cold and unforgiving. "You were defeated," the first counselor declared. "You had 800 warships, you faced a single vessel, and you fled." Vorath kept his spine straight despite the shame burning through his heart. The vessel demonstrated capabilities beyond anything in our records. It neutralized our weapon systems simultaneously across the entire fleet. It destroyed the Vrexy flagship without any visible mechanism of attack. I made the decision to preserve our forces rather than sacrifice them uselessly. You made the decision to show weakness to every watching species in the galaxy. The second counselor's voice dripped with contempt. The Kelthari Empire has never retreated from battle. Never, in 10,000 years. Until you. With respect, counselors, this was not a battle. It was a demonstration. Whatever technology that ship possesses, it is so far beyond our own that engaging it was never a realistic option. We would have lost everything. The first counselor leaned forward, his ancient scales clicking against his throne. "Tell us again about this vessel. Tell us about these humans who claim to be our elders." Vorath repeated the story he had told a dozen times already. The gravitational disturbance, the black ship emerging from impossible space, the voice that spoke in every language simultaneously, the white light that erased matter from existence, the claim that humanity had been a spacefaring civilization for 60,000 years. "Impossible," the third counselor declared flatly. "The humans are primitives. We have observed them for 300 years. They have achieved nothing that would suggest this kind of advancement." "And yet, counselor, their ship destroyed 300 Vrexy vessels in 10 minutes. Whatever the explanation, the capability is real." Silence fell over the throne room. The council members exchanged glances that carried centuries of shared history and unspoken communication. Finally, the first counselor spoke again. "We have been in contact with certain associates, beings who possess knowledge that extends beyond the records of any living empire. They have confirmed aspects of what you report." Vorath felt a chill run through his blood. "Associates? First counselor? There are powers in this galaxy that predate the current order. Powers that remember when the stars were young. They have watched from the darkness, intervening only when necessary to maintain the balance they prefer. They have told us of the humans. Both branches of them." The first counselor rose from his throne and descended the steps toward Vorath. Despite his great age, he moved with the fluid grace of a predator. 60,000 years ago, humanity was nearly exterminated. The survivors fled beyond the boundaries of the galaxy, developing in isolation, becoming something other than what they once were. They are called the Ascended, and they represent a threat to the established order of the cosmos. "A threat, First Counselor? They saved the Concordance fleet. They could have destroyed us as easily as they destroyed the Vrexy, but they did not. Because they are patient. Because they are playing a longer game than you can imagine." The first counselor's voice dropped to a near whisper. "They want to reshape the galaxy. They want to overthrow the order that has existed since before our ancestors crawled from the swamps of our homeworld. They want to elevate the younger species, the weak, the insignificant, at the expense of those who have earned their power through strength and conquest." That sounds like the Concordance philosophy. Exactly. The Concordance is their tool. They have been manipulating events for centuries, positioning pieces on a board that spans the entire galaxy. The alliance we formed with the Vrexy and the Mordak was meant to eliminate one of their pawns. Instead, it revealed their presence. Now they know that we know, and the real war begins. Vorath struggled to process what he was hearing. Ancient powers, cosmic conspiracies, wars that had been fought for tens of thousands of years. It was beyond anything his military mind had been trained to comprehend. "What do you want me to do, First Counselor?" "I want you to prepare for war. Real war. Not the border skirmishes and colonial suppressions that have occupied our fleets for the past few millennia. War against an enemy that has had 60,000 years to prepare. War that will determine whether the Kelthari Empire survives or is swept away by the tide of change." The First Counselor returned to his throne, settling into its familiar embrace with a sigh that carried the weight of ages. "You will be given command of the Third Battle Fleet. You will coordinate with the Mordak and with our new allies. You will find the weakness of these ascended humans, and you will exploit it. This is not a request, Admiral. This is the will of the Empire." Vorath bowed deeply, knowing that his fate had been sealed. Victory or death. There were no other options left. Far across the galaxy, aboard the Whisper of Consequence, Captain Sarah Chen received the news of the Kelthari preparations with something that resembled satisfaction. "They are moving faster than we anticipated," she remarked to the figure standing beside her on the observation deck. "The primordials must be pushing them hard." Commander Elena Vasquez, newly appointed liaison between the Concordance and the Ascended, studied the tactical display with eyes that were slowly learning to read its alien interface. 6 months of intensive training had given her a basic understanding of Ascended technology, but she still felt like a child playing with tools designed for giants. "The primordials. You have mentioned them before, but never explained." "Who are they? What are they?" Chen was silent for a long moment, her glowing eyes fixed on something that Elena could not see. "They are what existed before the current universe took shape. When reality was still forming, when the laws of physics were still negotiating with each other, there were beings of pure energy and will that learned to exist in the chaos. Most of them faded when the cosmos stabilized. Some survived by finding ways to hide in the cracks between dimensions. And they have been watching all this time, for billions of years. Time does not mean the same thing to them that it does to us. A billion years, a single heartbeat. These are equivalent concepts from their perspective. They are patient in ways that biological minds cannot comprehend. But they are also afraid. Afraid of what? Chen turned to face her directly. Of us. Of what we represent. Life, Elena. Biological life that grows and changes and adapts. We are unpredictable. We evolve. We exceed expectations. The primordials have calculated the trajectory of the universe since its birth, and we are the variable they cannot control. That is why they tried to exterminate humanity 60,000 years ago. That is why they try to exterminate every species that shows potential for transcendence. They have done it hundreds of times across the history of the galaxy. Species that might have matched or exceeded our own development, snuffed out before they could threaten the primordial order. We were supposed to be one more extinction event. We survived because they underestimated us. Elena thought about the younger humanity, the 8 billion people on Earth who had no idea any of this was happening. And the people on our homeworld? The second humanity? They are in danger from these primordials as well? They are the primary target now. The primordials know they cannot destroy us directly. We have grown too strong, developed too many countermeasures. But if they can eliminate the second branch of humanity before it develops its potential, they can ensure that we remain alone, isolated, without hope of renewal. You have said this before. What do you mean by renewal? Chen walked to the edge of the observation deck, where a railing of solid light prevented any accidental falls into the void visible below. She placed her hands on the railing and leaned forward, her posture surprisingly vulnerable for a being of such immense power. When we fled the galaxy, we did everything necessary to survive. We modified our bodies, our minds, our very nature. We became capable of things that would seem like magic to any other species. But in the process, we lost something fundamental to what it means to be human. What did you lose? The ability to be surprised, the ability to grow in unexpected directions, the ability to make mistakes and learn from them naturally. We have become too perfect, Elena, too optimized. We know what we are, and we know what we can become. And there are no more mysteries left for us to solve. We have reached the end of our own evolutionary potential. She turned back to face Elena, and for the first time, the commander saw genuine sadness in those ancient eyes. The second humanity is our hope for something new. They carry our genetic template, but they have developed independently, faced different challenges, found different solutions. When they eventually achieve transcendence, and they will become something that we cannot predict, something that might show us a path forward that we cannot see from where we stand. You are saying that you need them to save you, not just protect them. You need them. Yes, the relationship is not one-sided. We can offer them protection, knowledge, guidance, but they can offer us something even more valuable. A future that is not predetermined, a chance to grow again, to change again, to become more than we currently are. Elena absorbed this revelation in silence. She had thought of the Ascended as gods, being so far beyond normal existence that their motivations were essentially unknowable. Learning that they were as lost and searching as anyone else made them somehow more real, more sympathetic. The Concordance Council has voted to accept full alliance, she reported. Every member species has agreed to the terms you proposed. We will begin receiving technology transfers next month. Training programs for our crews will start immediately. We are committed. I know. I was observing the vote. Chen smiled at Elena's surprise. We observe many things. It is not invasive surveillance. It is simply awareness. When you have existed as long as we have, you develop a sense for the currents of causality. Important decisions create ripples that can be felt across great distances. That sounds like prophecy. It is similar but different. We do not see the future. We see the shape of possibilities. We can tell when a moment is significant, when a choice will have consequences that extend far beyond its immediate context. The Concordance vote was such a moment. Your civilization has chosen a path that will lead to transformation. There is no going back now. A chime sounded through the observation deck, and Chen's expression shifted to one of focused attention. The Kelthari 3rd Battle Fleet has begun mobilization. Preliminary estimates suggest they will be ready for offensive operations within 2 standard months. The Mordak are contributing their crystalline guard, their most elite combat formation. And there are other forces gathering as well, forces that do not appear in normal sensor sweeps. The Primordials? They're servants, beings that have been corrupted or created to serve the primordial agenda. They cannot manifest directly in normal space, but they can influence those who are susceptible to their whispers. The Kelthari First Counselor has been in contact with them for decades. He believes he is using them for the benefit of his empire. In reality, he is being used. Elena felt a surge of fear that she struggled to control. How do we fight something like that? How do we fight beings that exist outside of normal reality? By standing together, by refusing to be divided, by demonstrating that the younger species of this galaxy are not the weak, insignificant creatures that the established order believes them to be. Chen placed a hand on Elena's shoulder, and the touch was warm and reassuring despite everything. The Concordance has already proven this once. In the battle 6 months ago, your fleet fought against impossible odds. You did not surrender. You did not break. You held the line until help arrived, and your courage bought enough time for intervention. We were losing. We were dying. But you were fighting. That matters more than you know. The primordials feed on despair. They grow stronger when civilizations give up hope. Your refusal to surrender, even when surrender was the logical choice, weakened their influence in that region of space. It created an opening that we could exploit. The observation deck's display shifted, showing a map of the galaxy with various zones highlighted in different colors. Green showed Concordance territory and allies. Red showed the empires aligned against them. Black showed something else. Patches of darkness scattered throughout the galactic disk. These are areas of primordial influence, Chen explained. Places where their servants have established footholds, places where hope has been extinguished. Over the next several years, we will need to systematically reclaim these territories, not through conquest, but through inspiration, by showing the species trapped in those regions that there is an alternative to despair. That sounds like missionary work. In a sense, it is. The primordials represent entropy, stagnation, the slow death of possibility. We represent growth, change, the endless potential of life to exceed its limitations. This is not a war that will be won through weapons alone. It is a war for the soul of the galaxy. Elena studied the map, trying to understand the scope of what lay ahead. Millions of star systems, trillions of individual beings, a conflict that had been building for billions of years, finally coming to its climax. The second humanity, she said slowly. The people on Earth. When will they learn the truth? When will they join this war? Not yet. They are not ready. They are still divided among themselves, still struggling with challenges that we solved millennia ago. If we revealed ourselves to them now, the shock would shatter their civilization. They would not be strengthened by the knowledge. They would be broken by it. So they remain unaware while the galaxy fights over their future. For now, but not forever. We have agents among them, observers who monitor their development and occasionally provide subtle guidance. They are growing faster than they know. Their technology, their social structures, their understanding of the universe, all of it is accelerating. Within a century, perhaps two, they will be ready for contact. A century is a long time to fight a war. Chen laughed, a genuine sound of amusement that reminded Elena again of the humanity hidden beneath the transcendent exterior. A century is nothing to beings like us. We have been fighting this war for 60,000 years. We will fight it for 60,000 more if necessary. Time is on our side. The primordials may be patient, but they are also desperate. They know that every year that passes sees more species awakening to their potential. They know that the balance is shifting against them. That is why they are accelerating their plans, pushing the empires toward conflict, trying to create chaos that will halt the progress they fear. She gestured at the map, and it shifted again, showing projections and probability curves that Elena could barely interpret. The war begins in earnest within months. The Kelthari and their allies will attack Concordance positions. We will respond. The galaxy will be forced to choose sides. Some will join us. Some will oppose us. Most will try to remain neutral until neutrality is no longer possible. And when it is over? When the primordials are defeated? What then? Then we begin the real work. Building a galaxy where every species has the opportunity to grow and develop. Where the strong protect the weak instead of exploiting them. Where humanity, both branches of humanity, can fulfill the potential that makes the ancient powers so afraid. Chen turned to face the stars, her expression distant but hopeful. Our younger siblings on Earth have a saying, "The stars are not meant for the timid." They were right about that, even if they did not know how right. The cosmos is vast and ancient and often cruel, but it is also full of wonder and possibility and the endless capacity for life to surprise itself. She looked back at Elena and smiled. Welcome to the universe, Commander. The real universe, with all its horrors and all its beauties. The war ahead will be long and difficult and costly. But we will win. Not because we are stronger or smarter or more ruthless than our enemies. We will win because we fight for something worth fighting for. We fight for hope. And hope is the one weapon that the primordials have never been able to defeat. Outside the observation deck, the stars burned with ancient light. Wars that had begun before life evolved on Earth were approaching their final stages. Conspiracies that spanned dimensions were being exposed. And somewhere in a small corner of an ordinary galaxy, a species that had twice risen from the edge of extinction was preparing to reshape the cosmos itself. The universe had been shocked by the revelation of humanity's true nature, but the greatest shocks were still to come. The story of humanity, both humanities, was only beginning.